Welcome back to Switch to Linux. We have another just kind of an off-topic quick news item here, and this was brought to my attention in an article link this morning, and so I wanted to go ahead and address this. And this is that Ubuntu seems to be borrowing some plays from Microsoft's Playbook. So what they released is information that Ubuntu, starting in 1804 installer, is going to start collecting data. Now, this is not as bad as Windows 10 data collection, but it is still pretty bad, and I'm going to go into some details and why I think this. And so the news source, of course, which wrote the article I'm going to pull from is OMG Ubuntu, and all I have to say about this is OMG Ubuntu. What are you doing? Now, if you recall, first and foremost, the number of Linux users is on the rise because people are fleeing the Microsoft system because of privacy concerns. That is one of the chief reasons people are moving away from Microsoft and Apple in many ways. Now, not everyone's not leaving in droves, obviously, but those people that realize there's privacy issues, if they want to look into it and see that, see the cursory things that now Ubuntu and which is arguably one of the more popular Linux distros is doing data collection too, I think many of them are just going to say, why bother changing? You see, when we start recognizing that there's privacy issues and privacy concerns, that's the point in time that we really need to sit back and move on to something else. Now, why I say this isn't as bad yet is that they're collecting data and actually publishing it online publicly about what type of operating systems, the time of install, what options are involved. And I'm going to detail why this is a problem. But I got to say that if Ubuntu doesn't fix this, if Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu, doesn't realize that this is a big mistake, they possibly will become a very irrelevant distro. And the reason I say that is, remember the controversy that happened when they merely put the internet results in the Ubuntu and the Unity Ubuntu search function, or they put the Amazon linkage in there? That caused backlash because people on Linux are privacy-centric people for the most part. The people moving from the operating system, from the Windows system, the reason they're getting to move over to Linux is because they're concerned with data collection. And while this isn't as bad as what Microsoft is doing, it is still bad because this is that first step down the slippery slope, and you can already see the direction that it's moving. So let's go ahead and have a look at this article. So from OMG Ubuntu, and this was released, I wish they had dates on these. I think this was released yesterday. I think Canonical made the announcement on the 14th, which would have been 2 days ago. So, or maybe OMG Ubuntu also released it the same day. I missed this until somebody had sent me this article. So, it wants to know, they say it wants to know you, and I'm going to say first and foremost, I do not like the bias that OMG Ubuntu is putting in the thing, because it's like they're trying to kind of stir up a little controversy, kind of like get you connected, and then downplay it. This is not something we need to downplay. Okay? Alright, so it specifically is collecting data for now on what your system is. And so they chose today, the International Day of Romance and Overpriced Heart-Shaped Keyrings, to tell Ubuntu community of its plans to include data collection tool in the Ubuntu 1804 installer. So this is in the installer. So in theory, any distro based on Ubuntu using the Ubuntu installer is probably also going to have some of this. And that causes me to raise some very serious questions to other distros, primarily my favorite, Linux Mint. What are you going to do, Linux Mint? Are you going to look at this and say, our users don't like this? This is stuff Linux people don't like. And so will you take it out? There's a question. All right, so the feature will compile a stack of salient information about your system hardware and send it back to Canonical. But before anyone freaks out, this is where they're kind of downplay it. Before anyone freaks out, reaches for rotten fruit, or digs out a pun-addled placard list, last wave... Canonical's direction circa 2013, which is that internet search thing. This sounds like a good thing. No, it's not. Help improve Ubuntu by doing nothing. This is the fake card that PR and privacy statements and terms of conditions are pushing out to everyone. We're just going to make it better. You don't make it better by putting in things that are contrary to the philosophy that caused people to move to you in the first place wanted to avoid. That's the ultimate argument here. We can gather enough information to help improve Ubuntu without forcing this data collection. And it's not entirely forced. We're going to get into that. So Canonical's desktop team will lead Will Cook, who probably needs fired, explains more about the initiative in an email to the Ubuntu development mailing list where he writes, "We want to be able to focus our engineering efforts on the things that matter most to our users, and in order to do that, we need to get more data about the sort of setups our users have and which software they are running on it." So already it's not just your hardware. Now they want to see what hardware and software setups you're using. This is where we start tumbling down the slippery slope. Since few, if any, users would choose to opt in and share this sort of data, Canonical is making participation scheme entirely opt out. That's your problem, Canonical. Your target audience does not like this kind of stuff. That's why they're moving to Linux away from Spyware 10 by Microshaft. Okay? And the fact that your users, if any, few, if any, do you see this? Few, if any, would choose to opt into this kind of data. That's a pretty good call that you shouldn't do this, Ubuntu. It really is. That means unless you choose otherwise, Ubuntu 18.04 will automatically compile data about your system and send it back to the cheerful chaps and chapesses at Canonical HQ in order to help improve Ubuntu. Isn't it a particularly unreasonable, it isn't a particularly unreasonable request. Well, when people move to Linux, for the most part, to get away from the privacy issues on other operating systems, yes, it's a very unreasonable request. You may, like me, be surprised, we're downplaying again, surprised that Ubuntu doesn't collect this sort of data already. No, they tried a couple of times. It caused user backlash. If this company doesn't, these guys have already shot themselves in the foot by going back to the GNOME system, which while some people like GNOME, a large community of users don't. Okay, GNOME has its places. I don't think it's entirely sucks. It doesn't fit with my workflow, but I am not alone in that. They've dumped Unity, and I think now Ubuntu Mate is a more popular distro than is Ubuntu, the regular Ubuntu, because people are just not liking it with GNOME. And I know it used to come with GNOME a long time ago. All right. So besides when compared to the invasive tentacles groping I guess that's each and every facet of usage on other operating systems, Ubuntu's ask for sedate-sounding system details barely registers as soft tickle in the privacy department. Once again, we are downplaying this, and it's a bad downplay. On the flip side, giving Ubuntu's track record in the area of privacy, leaky Unity search results, Big Brother awards, and so on, some people will feel uneasy about this development. And that Ubuntu, Canonical, is the next reason you don't do this. This is the type of thing that Windows users roll over and play dead and go, well, there's no other operating system. They move to Linux because they're more privacy-centric. That's the thing. Anyone who doesn't want to share this data can untick the box, opt out, and continue their install. So it's not like Windows where it's absolutely forced. It is a checkbox on the installer. Okay? And as a checkbox on the installer, you have the option to turn it off. But the mere fact that it's turned on, and it's turned on because too few people would opt in for it, is the sign you should not be doing this. I would not have as big a deal if this was totally opt-in 100%. I wouldn't have as big a deal. But the fact they're forcing it, that is enough for me to kick Ubuntu off my top 5 list. So I might have to redo my video from the other day again. Okay, so this is the data unit Ubuntu says it wants to collect about your system. It sounds rather innocuous, and it's not. Which version of Ubuntu you're installing, including which flavor, i.e. which desktop environment, the community builds, in other words. Whether you have network connectivity, hardware stats, including CPU, RAM, GPU, etc., your device vendor, Dell, Lenovo, etc., your country, how long your install took, whether you have auto login enabled, your disk layout, whether you choose to install third-party codecs, and whether you choose to download updates during install. In other words, a system fingerprint. That's not good, Ubuntu. Now, they do say that no IP addresses are stored as part of the process, and that all data is sent using a secure and encrypted settings. And then, of course, you can actually publicly view the data as well. Okay, but this is where we start to see, we are already stumbling down the slippery slope where it talks about what software configurations as well, because that's in there. Now we're going to go into the full-scale snowball down the hill. Beyond collecting some initial install time data, Canonical also says it wants to enable 2 other services to collect data on your system. Ubuntu Popcorn to track relative popularity of apps, packages, and so on. Very much like Windows, which apps are you using? And AppPort to automatically send anonymous crash reports, like Windows. Yeah, it does sound definitely like Ubuntu is borrowing from Microsoft's Playbook here, doesn't it? Alongside the option to opt out of data collection during the installer, options will also be added to the privacy panel in the settings app so that you can disable/opt out at any time. That's the only real saving grace, is that you have the ability to do the opt-out. The thing is, though, is that this is going to scar Ubuntu enough that it's going to cause a lot more people to question whether a move to Linux is merited at all. My biggest question is, what are downstream guys going to do? What is Pop OS? What is Linux Mint? What is Elementary? What are all of these other distros going to do whom are so radically based on Ubuntu? Are they going to adopt this nonsense? Or are they going to look at this and go, our users really don't want this, and kick it out? And that's what I hope. And I'm going to be looking into this a lot further. If it gets to the point where I need to start recommending more of your Arch-based or more Debian-based and cut Ubuntu out, I will. I might even have to start looking into the Debian-based Linux Mints again. I hope they're still in development, and I honestly haven't looked. So Ubuntu will make the results of the data public for everyone to see. You know what's most interesting? They will make the results if the data it gathers public. Anyone with a curious eye or nosy persuasion will be able to go online and see the overall percentage and spread of Ubuntu installs across the world. The hardware Ubuntu runs on, the amount of RAM users have, the apps they use most, and so on. That excites this author of this article greatly. That is the step onto the slippery hill that causes us to tumble down the slope of losing our privacy now, even on Linux. Because whether you like Ubuntu or not, you cannot deny it is one of, not necessarily the most, but one of the most influential distros of all time. And when they start borrowing from Microsoft's Playbook, collecting data in an opt-out form, collecting data about the apps you're using, sending information to a central server, making a fingerprint of your system, they are now denying the very thing that users are abandoning the other platforms for. Canonical, have you lost your mind? This needs some serious rethinking, and I think an apology might be in order. Do not forget the backlash you had out of merely putting internet results in the search panel, which isn't quite as innocuous as this, in my opinion. Or your Amazon app, This is dangerous, and this is a problem. And I think that this, for me, although just 2 weeks ago or so, I did my top five Linux distros, and I included Ubuntu. X-nay off that list. I'm gonna have to update that video soon because, frankly, if Ubuntu's trying to do this type of stuff, no, they're off my radar. They're off my radar, and they probably should be off yours too. That's my thought. That's my take. So I see that the OMG Ubuntu author of this is trying to spin a positive light on this, but this is not a positive light. This is the first step of a platform that's going to cause us a lot of harm down the road. Honestly, it really is. This is not a good thing. This is not a good thing at all. And I gotta say, I'm disappointed in Ubuntu. I switched to Linux to avoid data collection. And I don't care that you're trying to do it to say, oh, see what systems this runs on. You can gather that information from the help that you're giving people when they're asking for help. Okay? We didn't need to collect all this data to see that Ubuntu 17.10 had a problem on Lenovo laptops. We didn't need to collect this data up front. We can move on without data collection. And that is the very reason why people are switching over to the Linux environments, is because they do not want to be this spied on. Then it's not just your system hardware. Do you see that Ubuntu popcorn? They're trying to collect more data as well. What is up with that name? That's just weird to me. We're going to go ahead and leave this at that. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think this is good? Do you think this is bad? Oh, and I know some people are going to be like, yo, we can see how many people are actually running it. I'll tell you, there's going to be a whole lot fewer people running it if Canonical proceeds with this. There's still time, Ubuntu. There's still time. Fix it. Fix it. Don't make this public. This is garbage. This is garbage. Don't do it. Please. That's what I have to say about the topic, so thanks for watching. If you'd like to help support Switch to Linux, check out switchlinux.com/support to learn about all of the ways you can currently help support this channel. Thank you for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.